Okay, we're live. We are live. Welcome back to the Agostino Zinga show. No, welcome back to Open Tabs, actually, number 4. We're not the Agostino Zinga show. This is a little bit different than your regular scheduled programming. Hopefully, you are good wherever you may be. We are live in the sector, in the place to be, as you can see from where we are now. So, loads of things to get into as per usual. This is a bit more of an open format show where I just review some stuff that I obviously found on the interwebs. Loads of random open tabs I have loaded on my computers. So if you like that kind of stuff, grab yourself a little beverage or two or a snack and let's get right on in with it, innit? No delay, no waiting around. Might as well jump right into proceedings. So, what's the first thing on my mind? Okay, first thing that I've seen that I thought was pretty cool was this amazing 8K footage that's been recorded on the surface of Mars, right? The Perseverance rover that's been launched by NASA, I guess, has finally landed on Mars. We're going to probably get a lot more bits and pieces coming back in the next few months. I think there's meant to be some sort of drilling going down in February, but so far we've got this excellent, pretty excellent, pretty cool bit of footage here, courtesy of the Perseverance rover on the surface of the moon, and it looks absolutely epic, man. Like, look how cool that looks. I really love the look of that. You know what I actually like about it? I love how like ordinary it looks. It looks like any other rocky landscape you might find somewhere on Earth, right? It doesn't look that otherworldly. That's what's so spooky about it. I guess that's what makes it so yeah, that's what probably makes it so alien, right? It's the fact that it looks so similar, so familiar to us. And we've probably seen that landscape in the movie. We've probably imagined it when reading a great, bit of sci-fi. We've definitely pictured it somewhere, and now we have it, for us to view in 8K. And incredible. Look at that, and I guess that's the Perseverance rover itself. It's covered in quite a lot of dust. Actually, I think someone mentioned, I read somewhere that a lot of the reason why these type of unmanned rovers don't really work that well in the long run is that just the fact that they have to land, remotely. There's a lot of risk of the dust that's on the moon, or sorry, the dust that's on Mars, getting into some of the nooks and crannies of some of the bits on top of the rover itself that they need to use in order to move certain bits and whatever it may be. So it just kind of gets difficult to actually use. And if we actually had a human on Mars, the work that takes the rover, let's say, a year to do, could get done easily in the space of a month, because you could just wipe things down, move it over there, push it. I mean, there's a lot more improvisation that can go on. It just takes a while for those things to get done with the rover, but it's looking in pretty good nick, man. It looks like it's kind of handled the flight pretty well, handled the descent, and obviously the landing. Look at how cool that looks, man. Looks so cool. The only bummer is that so far there's been no evidence to support the idea that there's any kind of life on Mars at the moment. There's not really been any sort of findings. I guess they're going to have to dig under the surface of Mars, I think, unless, unfortunately, the rover can only dig a certain amount of millimeters, so there's not going to be much option or there's not going to be much route for us to kind of discover if there's any kind of life forms or species. I guess the other theory out there is that maybe civilization was wiped out billions and billions of years ago, and if a meteorite or some sort of natural environmental cataclysmic event happened in Earth, it would look similar to this. It would just be barren. There'd be no evidence that there was a civilization there prior, which is quite scary as well, right? To think that we're, as much as we kind of think we're super, super significant to the history of the world, really and truly, if a meteorite did come and completely, slap into the side, smash into the side of the Earth, a billion years from now, no one would have any idea that we even existed. You know what I mean? It's absolutely mad. Look at that. Craters everywhere. And I guess the rough terrain of Mars as well makes it that much difficult for stuff like the Starship, the SpaceX Starship, what we know, SN9, to effectively land on there, which is why they're going through so many prototypes and they're trying so many different solutions in terms of landing gear, because as you can tell, the terrain is incredibly, incredibly rough. I think they've picked out a couple of sites on Mars that are quite flat, that they could basically land on pretty easily, but it's still going to require a lot of engineering skill and innovation to get that right. You know what I mean? Because you could easily see a couple of landing legs sitting, on the wrong side of some of these rocks, and then suddenly the whole Starship thing comes tumbling down, and that's going to be the only route or solution for the astronauts who do end up eventually going to Mars to come back to Earth. So that's going to be a bit of a suicide mission if it ends up that way. Hopefully not. They're obviously testing out some cool ideas, but you can just see how insane. And again, we don't have any perspective of how big this ridge is compared to what we have here on Earth. There's no real scale, but I would imagine a lot of this stuff is pretty large. Cannon, what's up, man? Long time. Hope you're good, my friend. Hope you are well. Look at that. Look how cool that looks. That looks so awesome. And it's so it's so eerie to me just how well done the Martian movie is with Matt Damon. And I think if you've read the book too, it's pretty decent. I've actually I got through to about half of it before the actual movie came out. The plan was to read the entire book before the movie dropped, but c'est la vie. But it's actually maddening how accurate they depicted the landscape of Mars in that movie. It's maybe one of the best Matt Damon movies outside of his Bourne Supremacy stuff that he's done. Really, really good, man. And it's essentially he's acting in it by himself for long periods of the movie. But they got the landscape of it done really, really well. I'd imagine a lot of these images and and other depictions were sort of played into how they basically put it all together in computers, whatever it may be. But it looks great. Look at that. Craters everywhere. That looks so cool. The only disappointing thing, though, that I've read so far is that to make it habitable, you're going to have to terraform it, right? Which is essentially making sure, or man-made option to basically make the surface of the moon habitable for humans. The only other option, or the more practical option, will obviously be for humans to be placed into some sort of dome right, building or some sort, but then of course that takes away from enjoying the overall landscape of the place that you're at. So that might be a bit of an anticlimax, that you go all the way to Mars and then you end up having to live in some sort of rubber dome that's equivalent to a tent you might have sat in at, you know, some festival somewhere. That looks so cool. Love it, love it, love it. But yeah, super cool, isn't it? What do you think? I love it, man. But yeah, well, hopefully we get some more footage and bits and pieces from the rover sometime soon. I guess it's no, is it sometime soon? When's it gonna be? I think maybe the end of next month is gonna be a bit more pieces of footage that we're gonna get from it as it sort of beams over some of the bits of footage and obviously data that it collects from the surface of Mars. But I thought that was pretty cool to see, just something to kind of take you away from the daily scourge of, you know, COVID news that seems to be flooding our airwaves. Anyway, back to regular scheduled programming. What's this? Oh, this is an epic. You know me, I love a good public freak out. I love a good argument with some sort of person in law enforcement, and if it's even made better when it's with somebody that, you know, you would describe as a Karen. So this is a pretty funny video of this young lady deciding that this is advantageous route or tactic to make sure that a police officer gets his grippy hands off her wrist. Hear how this goes down.
Get your hands off of me! You are kidnapping me! I will personally... What is your name? Take your hands off of me. You are... You don't...
And please note the watermark on the top right. It's a page called Crazy Karens, where they put together compilations, I'm assuming, of Karens who are incredibly insane.
You have the right, sir. Get your hands off of me. I've done nothing wrong. I am not a criminal. Get your hands off of me. Get your hands off of me.
Ma'am.
That's a violation. Take your hand off of me.
I've mentioned it plenty of times before, but what I would give to swap, you know, like what was that TV show? Was it Magnum PI or whatever? I forgot. There was one TV show back in the day in the 80s, maybe 90s, where this guy had this like little, you know, see-through remote thing that he would press, and he'd let him kind of transpose himself in someone else's body, so he would end up in the body of a 14-year-old girl into an old lady or something to the along kind of lines. I'd love to get something like that to hold in my hand, so I can press a button, so I can be transported into the body of a, you know, middle-aged white lady in America who thinks the way to get de-arrested, if that's even a thing, is to consistently keep going, get your hands off of me. Like, I'd love for that to actually work, right? That to be an actual tactic that I could employ to ensure that I could go home to my family and not be riddled with bullets and left on the side of the highway somewhere contemplating my life choices.
Sir,
don't come behind me.
You need to read the Constitution.
Read the Constitution. And where are they, by the way? Another nondescript cafe somewhere where people are just trying to earn a living. They're trying to shovel sugary treats down their esophagus, and here's this lady deciding it's a prime time for her to let everybody know that she knows the law.
You don't have the right to do this. You're taking a picture of this. This is so illegal. You take your hands off of me, sir.
Jesus, look at that. And he's a sheriff too, right? He's not a regular police. Again, I don't know the difference in America between police officers and sheriffs, but I would imagine that someone with a sheriff emblazoned on the side of their arm and a massive star and loads of compartments on their bulletproof vests where they store ammunition, pepper spray, you know, handcuffs, tasers, and all grenades and whatever. It's probably not the person you want to have constant arguments with. And that's one thing that's always kind of surprised me, innit? In the UK, you get a lot of people that get lippy to cops. Happens all the time, innit? You call them names, pig, oink, oink, whatever, popo, you ran away from them, da da da. It's all a big game. But usually the guys that you're running away from are no different to some scrub that you might go play football with in Power League. But the guys in America, for the most part, the police officers they have there, they're either really aggressive jobs worth, or they're just fat, sort of like, you know, donut eating police officers who are both as dangerous of each other, right? Because the fat police officer isn't going to run after you down the street, but but he's probably going to shoot you in your back. And the job's worth is definitely going to make sure that he takes you in because he loves his job. So I've always wondered, why are Americans so prone to argue with these people? There's been countless episodes of people, you know, arguing with police officers and it ending in really fatal way. But they always seem to like love to speak up and let their voices be heard. And for what, really? How many bits of footage have you seen online where somebody's arguing with a police officer and the police officers let them go? Never happens.
I am not a criminal. I've done nothing wrong. I'm asking you to get your hand off of me.
Wow.
To take your hand
Wow.
Take your hand off of me.
Wow.
Your hand off of me.
Wow.
Your hand off of me.
She's legit talking to him like he's her son's best friend or something. Like, what in the hell? She's pointing her hand in his face aggressively, and he's keeping himself pretty calm, right? He's kind of still saying ma'am. He's not relinquishing his grip. Again, we don't know why he's even there in the first place. Why? That's the thing as well in America. Why is it that police officers and sheriffs are like the arbiters of, I don't know, judging customer quarrels? Why can't it just end with the manager in store? Why does it always have to escalate to a flipping Fed jumping out of his squad car and coming into a flipping cafeteria to sort out a disagreement between a group of women eating sugary treats, right? It's just so bizarre.
Take your hand off of me.
Wow.
I don't want your hand off. You're violating my personhood. I have my First Amendment rights.
Jesus Christ.
You get this? I'm asking.
Are you getting this? Yeah, he's a police officer and he's trying to get you to leave.
Him to take his hand off me. He has no right to kidnap me. This is kidnapping.
Now it's kidnap. Okay, of course. Now she's obviously doing what most people do when they're losing an argument. You just invent your entire you invent your own narrative to fit you invent your own narrative so that you can you know, continue on this idea that you're somehow the one that's being oppressed in a situation, when most likely, what do we think happened here? Do we think this lady went into the cafe, asked for a bacon sandwich, and they told her it was sold out, and then they called the police? Or do you think most likely she asked for a bacon sandwich, they told her it was sold out, and then she started hurling abuse at the staff members? They then couldn't handle the abuse, so they decided to call the cops, and then one of the cops come down who happened to be in the area. I would probably say option B.
You are. Let go of me.
No.
Let go of me.
I'm happy to step out.
This is because the police department are ignorant of their constitutional rights. Okay. This is why this man has his hand on me, and he's on my personhood.
So she called him ignorant. She said he's kidnapping her, and he's violating her personhood.
And I have the right to protect my personhood. No, sir.
What is a personhood? Is that like an extension of womanhood? I've never heard the term personhood in my entire life. Is that an actual term? Personhood. What does that even mean? Is she just inventing words here to fit her narrative?
Take your hand off of me. Take your hand off. Don't steal my
Jesus
purse.
Christ.
Don't steal my purse.
No, he's stealing her purse. Like, what?
I have done nothing wrong. Take a picture of these guys. Get the names.
Take a picture of these guys.
Getting all this? You see this? This is illegal.
And of course, what she's got like an animal print outfit on, over dyed hair, probably off the Addies or Perks or something. Just complete horror show of a person. Shame on you. Shame on you. Maybe a shame on you. Look how she's acting like a toddler. She's now, you know, decided to throw herself to the floor like a child, so she doesn't want to move.
Shame on you. Let go of my purse. Are Are you filming this, sweetheart?
Yes, I am.
Are you filming this, sweetheart? Stop it! You cannot arrest me. I've done nothing illegal. I have done nothing illegal.
What are you being arrested for?
Stop it! Stop it!
No.
Put your hands back. Stop resisting.
No! I am not under arrest.
To be fair though as well, this is a bit ridiculous, isn't it? Why are two grown men struggling to get to handcuff a lady that looks like she's probably the most amount of exercise she's done is chasing after her corgi inside of her, you know, 1-bedroom flat somewhere? This is insane. They're legitimately struggling to get the handcuffs on her. Like, this is not even a joke.
Leave me alone.
Leave me alone. Let's look, they're struggling to get the
Put your
handcuffs.
hands back. Stop resisting.
Let go. I am not.
Put your hands back. Stop resisting. Put your hands back. Stop resisting. Put your hands back. Stop resisting. Put your hands back. Stop resisting.
Absolutely insane. Honestly, these people are legitimately insane. Like, I don't even know what started it. I don't even know if it's even worth getting into an argument with somebody in a flipping cafe and then deciding to then get pulled out and dragged into the back of a squad car for what? Like, this is, oh jeez. If ever there was a illustration of gross misuse of police time and resources, this is it, man. This would be it. Let's read some of the comments here. Go limp, lol. Honestly, this is hilarious. Like, what is she doing? What is she doing? What are they doing? It's a complete and utter horror show, mate. I don't know. I don't know what's wrong with these people. They probably don't know what's wrong with themselves. You know, they're trying. We're living in hard times. We're trying to make the best of our own situations. And this woman's here crying and screaming. Make sure you're filming this. Make sure you got this. Like, don't worry, we have this. We got this. We know we know what's on there. You don't need to keep reminding us, young lady. We know. What else is next on here? We have this pretty funny video. Let's see if I can get this up on here. This is from a farmer. Getting a bit spooked out because he's being followed by a bunch of cows. Oh, let me see if I can get this up. I thought this was hilarious. Let's see if I can pause this. Hopefully it loads. Bish bash bosh. Come on, yo. Let's get up on here.
Some rioters thought
Uh-oh. Oh no, this is something else. What's this? This is another video. See, this is, I got the wrong one actually, but let's play anyway.
Some rioters thought authorities would be on their side.
The cognitive dissonance and the zealotry of these people is unreal. You know, they were waving the thin blue line flag and telling us, you know, we're not your enemies, while they were attacking us and, you know, kill one of us. Some of them felt like we would be some of them felt like we would be fast friends because they've been, so many of them have been vocal or at least virtue signaling their support for the police over the past year. They say things like, you know, we've been supporting you through all this Black Lives Matter stuff, you should have our back. And they felt like entitled. They felt like they would just walk up there and tell us that they're here to take back Congress, and we would agree with them, and we'd walk in hand and just take over the nation. But obviously that was not the case, and it will never be the case.
As bad as this whole thing has been, right? Don't some of you think this constant 24/7 media coverage of this Capitol building protest and storming is a bit counterproductive? Especially if you're trying to heal the nation, you're trying to bring both sides of the party together, you're trying to move into a much brighter and prosperous future. That they're constantly covering this, they're constantly covering the thing about supposedly they foiled the plan of some of the protesters to kidnap some of the politicians that are in that building. AOC came out and said she was fearing for her life, all this sort of stuff. Like, don't you think all of that constant coverage and analysis and deep diving is just, if anything, just stoking the flames and making things much worse. Yes, we know what Trump did was, categorically wrong. He shouldn't have been riling up his base to get people to go down to that building to storm it in any way, shape or form. We also are aware from the footage that we've seen of these people that they're pretty useless. They're full of, quite a strong contingency of losers, people that were just, disillusioned and lost and were looking for some sort of direction or looking for an outlet to just kind of vent their anger. But to suggest that they were going there as some sort of coup, as insurrection, that they were going to put heads on spikes, it's just ridiculous. Like, they weren't ready for a fight. They weren't ready to do anything really heinous. Yes, they might have, unfortunately, of course, for the family, killed a police officer. But if they really wanted to cause some damage, they could have caused some damage, really, in a big way. But it didn't happen. They had plenty of time to do that, especially before the the National Guard came in. I just don't know, man. I think all this constant coverage of this stuff is getting a little bit ridiculous, getting a little bit trite. Like, as much as Trump, played a huge part in this, I think a lot of this has to definitely fall on the feet of Fox and CNN as well, for constantly covering the divide on both sides, innit? Constantly covering the fringe of both ends of the political spectrum. CNN, obviously the left, and then of course Fox News with the people far on the right. It's just a little bit insane, man. I don't know. I just feel it's a bit too much now. It's like, we get it. It was a bad thing. It shouldn't have happened. But let's move on a little bit. Let's move on to something else. Like, this is getting a little bit of OTT. And if you think I'm being OTT and you think, oh no, you're not being too serious about it, it's a serious issue. It's a serious issue. Some really bad things happen. Okay, if you think that, then check out this video of this guy and see if this dude doesn't really strike me as the most intelligent man in the world. And he was out there as well, right? Protesting for his rights. Hear what he has to say. Let's see if I can play this. Come on, son.
Our country's worth fighting for. Every day until this election is over and Donald J. Trump is put back in that White House 100% indefinitely. Man, this isn't just a fight for Donald Trump. This is a fight of good versus evil, right versus wrong. I love my country. I had to tell my son before I left home, listen, son, I'm doing this for you. Daddy may not come home, but that's okay. I'll stand in the gap so he doesn't have to, so your kids don't have to. I'll take whatever comes.
Like, what is he even talking about? Right? And these are the people that keep getting covered on the news 24/7, right? They were an uprising, a coup, overthrow the government. Does this guy not even have to spell his own name? No offense to the dude. Do you think he knows how to spell his own name, legitimately? Can he write a letter by hand? I don't think so. These people are, on the fringes of the fringes of the fringes. They need to be welcomed back into the fold in some kind and loving way, but they shouldn't be vilified as domestic terrorists. They don't have a clue. Do you think this guy can build a bomb? Really? Do you think he has the expertise to build something intricate like that in his home without anyone detecting it? That's not going to happen. These people are lost. They need love. They need support. They need to be welcomed back into the fold, not ostracized and radicalized because they've been forgotten about, right? There's plenty of things that probably need to change in America in general just to kind of get these guys to feel like, that they have a part to play, that their voices have been heard in some regard. Not this, not just pushing them out to the fringes. This is completely insane, man. Like, I don't know. We've seen coups before. We saw the fall of, what's his name? Saddam Hussein. We saw how that happened, right? That was pretty quick. That was pretty swift. They stormed the palace. They dragged him out by his feet, beat him up with sandals, shoved the gun up his ass, I think, or something. He got beaten and bloodied very, very quickly, right? The uprising was swift and very deadly. If this was meant to be a deadly and swift uprising, there would have been a lot more bodies on the floor. And thank God there wasn't. But let's relax, man. Let's relax with the footage. Let's relax with painting these guys out to be, I don't know, domestic terrorists. It's like, extra beyond belief, in my humble opinion. But hey, What do I know? Let's go through some of the comments quickly here before we head back into some of the other topics. What was I saying here? Corgi said you need the military, trust the plan. This could have infiltrated the riot and do some serious damage. Yeah, possibly. Nick says here, Mama's basement dwelling people dropped on his head as a baby for sure. Yep, exactly. I'm glad I'm not the only one that thinks that. So what else do we have here that I want to quickly show you guys? Stuff that I've seen on the internet that I thought was pretty hilarious. This is probably my favorite video of all time in terms of public freak out encounters. That kind of has a special place in my heart. Let me play this, guys, for you. See if I can get it up on here. This is the one. I love this video.
Get out of the truck! Get out of the truck, little lady!
Nah, I'm good.
See, because you know you lose.
How do I lose?
Because I will beat your fucking dick into the ground all day long.
That's kind of gay, isn't it?
I will beat your dick.
Oh, it's so good. It's so fucking good. One more time.
Get out of the truck, little lady!
Nah, I'm good.
See, because you know you lose.
How do I lose?
Because I will beat your fucking dick into the ground all day long.
That's kind of gay, isn't it?
I will beat your dick.
That's the best way to diffuse a quite volatile situation. Oh, I fucking love it, man. Absolutely love it. Absolutely love it. But yeah, let's move on to some more poignant issues here. Something that I kind of want to address. So, I'm not too sure how many fans of hip hop I have here on the stream watching live, or fans of Playboy Carti to be specific, but I've been trying my really hardest to re-listen to Whole Lotta Red, Playboy Carti's recent album that released on Christmas Day. I've been trying to give it a second, a third, a fourth, a fifth, a eighth, a 10th, a 15th chance to try and make it work, because I'm such a big Playboy Carti fan, and like all the other Carti fans out there, we waited 2.5 years, it felt like, for the album to drop, and then when it finally did release, it was full of so many duds that it's kind of making me upset. And it's really confusing now, because publications like Pitchfork, which are notoriously known for being a little bit weird with their gradings of albums, has now decided to bestow the honor of best new music for Playboy Carti's Whole Lotta Red. And I just simply don't understand. I do not get it. The album is probably a whole lot of mid, as it's been, negatively labeled. And it's just not good, man. Considering what he did prior, considering what he did on Die Lit, considering even what he did on Self-Titled, considering what you know he can do, especially when you think of the feature that he put out recently, or the feature that he was on with Yachty and Future, this album just doesn't come up to par. There's about, I'm going to say, 5 good tracks on there at best, 5 that I really enjoyed. But as an entire project, it just isn't good. I guess it shouldn't be any surprise, again, because I have mentioned prior on the show that I remember listening to a show or podcast or somebody speaking in Hollywood or somebody involved in the entertainment industry, and they always said, whenever you're thinking of somebody in the entertainment industry, somebody crosses your mind you haven't seen or heard from in a long while, it's either they're not relevant anymore, or they're hooked on drugs and alcohol or something. Someone mentioned that, right? There's only those 2 options. If you're involved, and I guess the whole premise behind that is that if you're involved in the entertainment industry, once you get in, you're going to be constantly wanting to feed the beast. You're going to constantly want that instant gratification. So there's no way you're going to purposely decide to take breaks and vacations and step away from the scene, especially if you're hot. You're going to continually want to be in front of the camera. It's just one of those drugs that you can't kind of get out your system. But there's obviously those unicorns who do exist, right? Those kind of recluses, like the Frank Oceans of this world. There's a few other people, right, who kind of don't really enjoy the limelight per se, and they don't really care about being relevant. They just do what they do, release it when they want, and just keep it moving. But somebody like a Playboy Carti, considering his age, considering the genre of music he makes, considering his overall talent, it just doesn't make any sense for someone like that to have taken that long of a break in between albums, from Die Lit to Whole Lot of Red, and for us to expect for the album to be good. It's just not likely. It just isn't going to happen. And I guess we shouldn't be that surprised, innit? And prior to that also, yeah, Kendrick is a good example too. That's a good one to mention. Prior to that, I think there was a lot of feeling, I felt like anyway, when I was looking at it from the outside in, there was a lot, I saw maybe the change in style I didn't have a problem with, because again, I'm a big fan of Rick Owens myself, so I love the aesthetic that he was kind of going for and he kind of evolved into. But there was a lot more, I felt, leaning into the rock star lifestyle, yeah, on the tracks, visually and probably lifestyle wise, that it made me believe that he wasn't spending that time away from music crafting a great project or honing his craft in any way, shape or form. He was definitely just indulging, you know, in OPM, as he says, and, you know, inviting around some bad bees into his hotel room to have some, you know, undisclosed PS5 fun. But for sure, the album didn't benefit from that break at all, not in the slightest. And again, it's just confusing considering the review that Pitchfork gave to it. I just don't like. It's hard to kind of wrangle as a fan, because again, I think sonically, I've listened to the album like more than 10 times. I've given it a go. I've put it in, you know, good headphones. I've played it through a Bluetooth speaker. I've listened to it on a run. I've listened to it when I was in the supermarket somewhere. I've done all that I can do to make it work, but it's just not there for me. It really isn't there. And it's so disappointing, because I was really looking forward to this. Is one of the main things I was looking forward to, especially in light of COVID, right? I remember seeing this screenshot a few weeks ago when Cyberpunk dropped, of somebody on Reddit basically saying that they were crying and they were in tears and they were upset because of all the bugs and the, you know, and the errors that were riddled all around Cyberpunk during its release, of course, that most of you are aware of. And the reason why they were saying that was because, like, you know, with COVID, the only thing that they were legitimately looking forward to this entire year was the ability to maybe play Cyberpunk, right? And it's unplayable. And at first when I saw that screenshot, I was like, oh, this guy's been a baby, innit? Like, who cries over a flipping computer game? But then when this album came out and it was really underwhelming and didn't live up to my expectations in the slightest, I suddenly started to understand why somebody could feel that way. Like, I really did. Don't get me wrong, I wasn't close to tears, but I was definitely annoyed. Like, and it's the first time I've ever had that happen to me with music. I usually don't go into listening to albums with that level of expectation. I just kind of let it play and hope for the best. And obviously, if it's an artist that you love, more often than not, you're going to enjoy what you listen to. But I don't go into it with any kind of preconceived ideas about what it's going to sound like, and I'm hoping it's going to sound like this. But with this, I kind of did have it. I kind of let myself dream, and maybe it was kind of not his fault, right? Throughout that 2 years gap that we were all patiently waiting for the album to drop, loads of leaks came out. We tried to listen to the leaks. I had a whole collection of leaks that I put into a little EP that I kind of run back 3 or 4, 7, 8, you know, a million times in the gym. Some stuff that had been kind of blatantly recorded off of a TV, some stuff that had been leaked off of the hard drive and wasn't finished and not mastered. Like, we did what we can with the album, and it just hasn't lived up to expectation. Like I said, it's just a hard thing to wrangle, that, you know, it's not living up to expectation of the fans from what I've seen so far. Even Mario Judah on No Jumper just said recently that he didn't like the album, but then big publications like Pitchfork, which again are notoriously known for being a little bit, you know, inconsistent with their scoring, have decided to bestow it brand new music awards. So let's quickly read through the review and see what I have to say regarding it. It says, yeah, Atlanta. So let's read the review. It says, Whole Lot of Red functions like a pressure cooker. Playboy Carti takes an endless supply of bright, serrated beats, packs them together end to end, so the album seems to careen wildly toward an unknown destination. Those beats are then populated by a 24-year-old's austere expressions, vocals, a string of barks, ad-libbed shards, and croned melodies and compounder mania. The effect is to make Whole Lot of Red the predecessor versus 2018 already. Intense, lit sound, and nearly stayed by comparison. And Carti's slight, cloudy, self-titled debut from 27 sounds positively tranquilized. People keep saying this, right? But I don't think necessarily that's true. They're effectively saying that it's like Lit but on steroids, and I don't really agree with it. I think if you listen to Lit sonically, it just it's far more interesting as an actual album to listen to than Whole Lotta Red. Whole Lotta Red, if anything, kind of relies way too heavily on the beats and the production. I guess it was purposely done where a lot of the vocals are layered on top of the beats, and it feels like there's no gap in between them. I guess that's purposeful. It kind of feels like he's kind of using his voice as an instrument, but it just doesn't work because he's talking absolute shit. Do you know what I mean? For the most part, his bars aren't even that great. They've never been that great, but you see it's even more so on this album. And again, when you strip away the baby voice, you strip away some of the effects, you're just left with nothing. So I don't really understand this sort of kind of critique, but I've seen it a lot. People saying that it's Lit on steroids. It's not. Anyway, it continues. Despite his youth, his brisk release schedule, Carti's cultish fan base would have you believe that the periods between these records are long droughts, ones that can only be weathered with frenzy detective work. It's easy to find hours long of playlists of unreleased Carti songs, some ripped in 15-second increments. Purchased the increments for an artist who already has an audience. Attention snippets and half-finished leaks can be more effective than singles. Our brains correct for the compression of a sound by imagining the fullest possible mix and hearing the most interesting part of the song. The bridge that everyone in the studio agrees is the best part suggests a more exciting finished product than the one that in likelihood exists. Again, that's just an excuse. It kind of feels like this is a bit of payola, like the label might have paid the reviewer to write them a favorable review. I don't agree with this at all. They're basically suggesting that somehow, because the edits are usually clips and snippets of stuff that we've liked online, that we're naturally going to love it a bit more than the overall album. But I don't agree. A lot of fans were ready and willing for the album to not sound anything like the leaks, but they just wanted a fuller sound, maybe representative of the stuff that you heard, and we didn't get any of that whatsoever. That's why people don't like it. A Whole Lotta Red, that's a weird thing to say. Anyway, it says here, Whole Lotta Red transposes that thrill of hearing an inspired work in progress and builds out into a fully realized style. There's no imposed formality of structure, of delivery that could stifle Carti or bleed the life out of the demos. Instead, there is a new tank which seems to have a half dozen choruses and ideas dispensed in a single. Verses degenerate into Georgian chants of Draco. It's spelled out repeatedly as if Kai is trying to win the world's most heavenly armed spelling bee. Stop Breathing is built around a single constant ad-lib sound. Even when the songs do conform to the more traditional arrangements, they arrived and then in unexpected ways. In Benno opens up with an insider. At least at best, Whole Lotta Red sounds like Carti's voice memos have been laid over the most punishing production. Okay, so at least they're agreeing with my point there. It does sound like the vocals have been layered really tightly on top of the production, but there's no room for it to breathe, so it just sounds a little bit muddled, and it sort of kind of overly relies on that pounding bass to kind of come through. It continues here. One of the signature elements of Carti's style has been his so-called baby voice. It softer touch in a higher register. He has not completely exercised it in Whole Lotta Red, but the album's most arresting moments come when Carti is rasping, evidently on the verge of losing his breath. Whole Lotta Red smartly opens up with the most prosperous song, where Carti's voice sounds as if it's already been strained and by an hour-long performance. Most impressive is the way that Carti has merged his delivery with his pared-down writing style, like when he snuck the line in, "When I go to sleep, I dream about murder," delivered over and over again on threatening stage whisper. But again, I just think this is all garbage, man. Again, excuses made for the album. What it said here, the last paragraph, it said it's one thing for a 24 song hour-long album that had become an object of such intense speculation to deliver on its promise, that it does so while maintaining an aura of mystery. In some ways, Carti's public persona betrays his fixation on high fashion. The rapper is a couture, something you can't simply walk into a department store and see and touch and own. His work, or at least the traces of it, seem ever present, but the man itself is a bit of a ghost. By contrast, the songs on Whole Lotta Red are urgent, immediate. While they seldom trade in anything like the autobiography, they cut loose close to the bone. Again, man, like objectively, right? Like I've got the track lists up here, right? So this is Whole Lotta Red, and this is Lit, And I just don't think like it. Just even just look at it artistically, because I have a theory that the album cover was even done the week before the album even come out. I don't think they even had like that big of a plan or rollout behind it, as opposed to what they did with the Die-Lit cover. But the album itself, in terms of the track listing, I can honestly say maybe 5 tracks on here are standouts, as in stuff that you would kind of say sounds like what you'd expect from Carti, but also interesting enough to kind of say, hey, this is where he's evolving to. I'd go Benno, maybe, is one of mine. I'd say Slayer. I'd say New Neon. I'd say maybe Sky. And then maybe Over. Again, those are probably just the only tracks I've kind of pick out from that list. But then if you go on Die-Lit, the album that came out in 2018, like even the worst song on here, which is probably Top, because I think when I checked on Spotify, Top had the least amount of the least amount of streams on there, something like 18 million, right? Even Top, the worst song on there, is probably better than the best song on Whole Lotta Red. It's not even close. Top is much better than anything on there. And then I think the second least listened song is this one, Middle of Summer, featuring Red Cold Hearted. And then the other one next to that is probably going to be Home, KOD, right? Bring that bunny on, daddy's waiting for it. Bring it, da-da-da. That song is like better than everything on Whole Lotta Red. There's nothing that even compares close to it. So when people say, oh, the album's good, people need to kind of take away the expectation of it and see it for what it is, it's like, no, objectively it isn't. And then when you add into the fact that, you know, this entire rollout was essentially ruined by Carti's extramarital affairs and the whole controversy around Iggy with the baby and that girl and all this sort of nonsense, it does add to this idea that he was completely distracted. He wasn't concentrating on honing his craft or presenting or putting together a cohesive album that kind of develops on the sound that he's obviously popularized. And essentially the fans paid the price, waiting 2.5 years maybe, yeah, for this album to drop. And then when it finally does drop, it's a whole lot of mid. And again, I've tried so hard to make this album work, but it just isn't working for me, man. It just sounds so terrible. It's disappointing. It's sad to see. We really wanted it to be a thing, and it just hasn't been a thing at all in the slightest. And yeah, man, I don't know. What can you do in it? Maybe it's a lesson to me in terms of releasing any form of expectation when it comes to listening to some of these new kids, because, you know, I can't blame them in some respect. You get signed, you put out an amazing album that's critically acclaimed, and then suddenly you're kind of, you know, you're a multi-millionaire overnight. You're the muse of all these amazing fashion designers in Paris. It's going to be difficult for you to sit down and write raps and put together, you know, beats and collaborate with producers and whatever it may be. It's just going to be difficult to do. There's way too many distractions. But yeah, it's disappointing, man. Just as a fan on the outside looking in. But, you know, I guess it is what we have to do. It is what we have to do. What else do we have here? What else do we have here? Looking. Oh, this is good news, isn't it, right? Courtesy of The Guardian, UK have got nowhere near looking at lifting the lockdown restrictions. This is great news. Awesome news. Happy news. News that should fill your heart with joy. We are nowhere near closer to opening up our economy or to getting back to living our normal lives in any way, shape or form. Not surprising really, a bit annoying, but hey, it says the following: ministers are waiting for evidence on whether the COVID-19 vaccines prevent transmissions of the virus before they've even considered laying out the timetable for lifting the lockdown restrictions, government sources say, with early data suggesting that the tide may be beginning to turn in some parts of the country. Boris Johnson has come under pressure from lockdown skeptics, right? On his backbenchers to say how and when the stay-at-home order can be loosened. And that's something as well that's just odd, right? There's such a lack of clarity in terms of targets, in terms of plan. Like, when do we aim to get things back to normal? Like, what is the target, our number that we're aiming for? What level do the cases need to be lowered to make it make sense for the economy to open? Nothing has been suggested, nothing has been said. And it makes complete sense when you look at this article that I saw online. This is courtesy of Newsweek. It says COVID lockdowns may have no clear benefit v voluntary measures, see international study. So in the long term, there's no clear benefit between doing what we did here in the UK and what they did in Scandinavia, where they just kind of relied on the whole herd immunity thing. There's no real difference between both approaches. How scary is that, considering the amount of businesses and lives that have been destroyed through this long period in time? So the article says the following: a study evaluating COVID-19 responses around the world found that mandatory lockdown orders early in the pandemic may not provide significantly more benefits to slowing the spread of the disease than other voluntary measures such as social distancing or travel reduction. There's not much difference. So if you just would have adopted the, hey, put a mask on if you're sick, keep distance, and limit the amount of time you're traveling around the place, you would have been fine. God damn it. The peer-reviewed study was published in the European Journal of Clinical Investigation on January 5th and analyzed the coronavirus case growth in 10 countries in early 2020. The study compared cases in England, France, Germany, Iran, Italy, Netherlands, Spain, and the US, and all countries that implemented mandatory lockdown orders and business closures, to South Korea and Sweden, which instituted less severe voluntary responses. It aimed to analyze the effect that less restrictive or more restrictive measures had in changing individual behavior and curbing the transmission of the virus. The research used a mathematical model to compare the countries that did and did not enact on restrictive orders and determined that there was no clear significant benefit of the effect of more restrictive measures on the case growth of any country. That is frightening, considering the amount of lives, businesses, economies, sectors that have been destroyed due to this prolonged period of time that we've spent indoors, not living our quote-unquote lives, isn't it? Like, maddening. And that's the one thing I had as criticism against most of the approaches, especially mainland Europe. There was a lack of innovation. Everyone was just, I guess it wasn't anyone's fault, right? Because once everyone saw the bodies dropping in Italy, people just started freaking out. But if people would have taken maybe a bit more, especially people in government, would have taken a bit more of a bird's eye view, took a deep breath, pulled out a bit, looked at the landscape completely, and then decided what was the best tactic to adopt for each said country, and maybe mixed it up a little bit, we would have had different points of reference and information and data that we could have gathered from all these different countries of how they've approached things, that we could have then implemented some of the good bits and then taken away some of the bad bits in terms of our approach. But because everyone just did the same thing kind of for the most part, in most Western European countries, everyone kind of adopted the same methodology. We were just basically left in this situation where it's just regional lockdowns, nationwide lockdowns, and more lockdowns. There's no real tactic in place to get the R number down to a reasonable level. It's just a lockdown after lockdown after lockdown after lockdown. It continues here: we do not question the role of the public health interventions or of the coordination communications about the pandemic, but we fail to find an additional benefit of the stay-at-home orders and business closures. However, the researchers also acknowledged that the study had limitations and noted that the cross-country comparisons are difficult since nations may have different rules, cultures, and relationships between the government and the citizens' history, which is the important part. They always sort of like lean on. You can't compare different countries because we're all different, blah blah blah. It's like, yeah, fuck off. Of course we can compare. We're doing a terrible job. We're seeing people in New Zealand, jumping up and down to Earth Gang and stuff in festivals, and here we are, scratching our balls and wearing the same pajamas for the 7 days because we haven't got the strength to do anything else. Come on. Ugh. But hey, what do I know? And then in other news that makes it even more interesting regarding the approach, look at this development courtesy of BBC News. The UK to close all travel corridors on Monday. So you're probably thinking to yourself, why are we just doing this on Monday? Why would we do this, maybe 10 months late, 10 months earlier? I have no idea. It doesn't really make any sense to me. I'm not a real big into politics. I just kind of look at it from the outside looking in, but it seems hilarious that this is now being kind of heralded as some sort of like giant leap for our approach to combating this disease, that we're deciding to do this now next Monday. Right? We're deciding to do it for next Monday, to close the travel corridor. Absolutely insane. This is from the BBC. It says the UK is set to close all corridors from Monday morning to protect against the risk of an unidentified new strain COVID. The PM said anyone flying into the country from overseas will have to show proof of a negative test before setting off. Only now they're doing this. It comes as a ban on travellers from South Africa and Portugal comes into force on Friday over concerns about the new variant identified in Brazil. Boris Johnson said the new rules would put into place at least until 15th of February. It's just odd to me, again, looking on the outside. I don't know much about politics, but from what I've understood, if the Tories are the ones pushing for Brexit and they finally, got Brexit done, as the slogan got said, so as a slogan is often used, why weren't they then the first people to kind of push for this, push for this closing of the borders and limiting the amount of people that come in from different countries? Like, why weren't they on that? Like, why were they just still kind of doing this kind of hands off, like la-di-di, la-da-da approach when they were the ones pushing for Brexit? It doesn't really make any sense, innit? It's so odd. But I'm sure there's other things at play that I'm probably not understanding from the outside looking in. But hey, that's what I got for you on that one. Next one. What else do we have? This is funny one, isn't it? You see this headline: fines after drinkers were found in a pub watching TV with the staff. You couldn't get more Nottingham than this, innit? And of course it happened in Nottingham. Look at that. Of course it happened in Nottingham. Of course. So it says the following: a pub owner and his customers have been fined after officers found 4 people drinking and watching television with a member of staff. And you can't blame them, can you, really? I think at the beginning of the lockdown, this would have been a big issue. People would have been angry and would have been saying this place should get fined, but you can't blame people for deciding to go out and meet people and try and hang around and have a little drink at the pub that they're so used to, because why else, what else would they be doing? Sitting at home waiting for Boris to give them permission to go outside? Sod off. It continues. Police said that they visited Plough Inn on Cropwell Butler, Northamptonshire on Wednesday, where they found the pub open. Officers returned a day later, finding the owners 1,000 and a total of 7 staff and customers 200 each for the breach of coronavirus rules. The pub has been contacted for comment. The restaurant locked down in England. Imagine that. That's so interesting, isn't it? I love that. You got to love Nottingham-based pubs deciding to just flout the rules and do what the fuck they want to do. What else do we have here that I thought was of interest? Oh, this is one, isn't it? Yeah, let's just get this one into place. So this is courtesy of Junction 2 Festival. So as most of you are aware, when have we been to Junction 2 Festival? Once. Is it once or twice? Once. I think it's once. It doesn't matter. Junction 2 Festival is one of the best festivals we have here in London. It's probably one of the loudest as well. There's usually a lot of noise complaints when it comes to London Festival, so the fact that they're able to crank it up really loud in a sparse location underneath a bridge, great stages, great usual lineup of people playing, a very diverse crowd. It's probably one of the best and premier places to go. And of course, due to COVID, it got cancelled last year, and it's more likely than not looking to be cancelled this year. But interesting enough, I got an email from Junction 2 Festival peeps, kind of rounding up their live stream thing that they did the other day and kind of talking about their plans for the future. And they decided to post this, which I kind of uploaded on my Twitter page, and this following the screenshot. So this is Junction 2 basically saying that they're looking forward to 2022 in terms of they want to put on an event which is looking highly dubious, but again, an interesting approach that they're sort of taking. So it says the following: with vaccinations swiftly rolling out across the world, we move forward into 2021 with renewed vigor, excitement, and enthusiasm about dancing with you all together very soon. A celebration 2 years in the making awaits in Junction 2, returning on the 4th and the 5th of June. So they already kind of have a plan in place of returning, right, on the 2nd of June as per usual, right? Also on the 4th and the 5th of June as they do per usual. So they've kind of got that penciled in, even though there's been no real indication from the government at all that the hospitality industry is going to be allowed to reopen or restart in any kind of meaningful way. It continues. To mark the special occasion, we have assembled our strongest ever lineup of the likes of Fortet, Nina Kravish, John Hopkins, Hessel Audio, Ben Clark, Adam Beyer, Amelie Lenz, all set to brace the stage. And the interesting thing about this is that if you look at the list of people that are playing, it's the same list of people that you would have seen play plague raves during the entire period of this lockdown, right? And plague raves were these events that were usually put on in spite of the local restrictions for gathering in place. Sometimes they were hosted in third world countries where they could flout the rules, and some people would kind of accuse them for contributing to the overall spread of the virus and essentially putting more time at the end for us to kind of not go and party, because, you know, as the virus spreads and it continues, more likely than not, restrictions will continue as well, which will mean that we are not going to be able to get back to the dance floor anytime soon. So there's this kind of accepted belief or the accepted idea or hope that somehow, because of lockdown, things will change and we'll get back to promoting local artists and having residents play, and not only, you know, and especially with Brexit, there won't be any kind of there won't be a reliance on getting these big ticket people to come in and fly in and play these places. That was a hope always, right? That was a big hope. Oh, this is what's going to happen. But the reality of it, what we basically seen, especially with the plague graves, is that because you're doing a plague rave that you probably shouldn't be doing, right, especially given the circumstances, and you're the promoter, you're the event booker, or you're the person in charge for tourism of your country, you don't want to take any chances. So what you're going to do, you're going to go book the top 20, 10, 5 DJs in the world who you know can sell tickets. You're going to try and get them in for a discount because it's COVID, and then you're going to sell the fuck out of that event and then get your money back. But this whole idea about saving a scene, hiring new people, giving young kids a chance, representation, diversity of lineup is going to go completely out the window. And I think this lineup should serve as a warning for what's to come. Like, if anybody's thinking things are going to change for the better, I don't think so. Especially on the biggest stages, I think they're just going to adopt whatever methodology and plan and approach that they had prior that works, because it was working prior to lockdown. It might not have been effective. It might not have been transformative. It might have been innovative. It might not have been impactful in any way, shape, or form. But it worked for them pretty well. So why would they change something if it's not broken? Especially if there's no incentive to. So what you're most likely going to see going forward on the bigger platforms is that you're going to see these big festivals, these big promotion companies just do the same thing they did prior to COVID in a really accelerated and really turned up fashion. So don't be surprised to see like marathon back-to-back sets with all these big, you know, playgrave type of DJs playing. But then I think also that then puts the onus back on bootstrapped organizers of events who are kind of operating on a smaller budget to then go out of their way to then get those people who should be getting more slots, more opportunity to play, to cultivate a fan base, or maybe getting in people for your representational purposes. But that's how it should be going. You should kind of start from a grassroots. But to expect big ticket festivals, big names, big brands to do that, they're gonna somehow play any role in saving a scene is naive in the extreme. And I think this flyer or this email that I got from Junction 2 should serve as a cautionary tale. Things won't really change for the better. If anything, they'll just return back to where they were. But if anything, the only people that will change is people like you and I, who are kind of on the ground, you know, kissing babies, shaking hands, doing the groundwork. We're the ones that are going to change it in some meaningful way. So if you've got an event that you want to put on, if you're thinking about getting back into the promoting game, I think this would probably be the best and ample time to do so. There's a real prime opportunity to kind of go out there and rewrite the narrative, kind of sculpt a whole different scene and community. But don't sit back and expect these big festivals to decide to go and do it for you, because that is not going to happen, as proven with this email that I received here from Junction. Okay, let's go and move on. Next on here, what else do we have here? Oh yeah, we got this. Okay, so this might be a bit of a controversial subject in general, because I'm a big fan of hers, right? But it's just the footage and the coverage. So Dua Lipa, I'm a big fan of, right? I played, you know, One Kiss was prior to COVID. One Kiss was my sleeper banger that I'd play in a bar, in a pub, right? Peak hours, you drop that One Kiss track that she did, and it would usually kind of go off, and girls would sing that track word for word. It mixes with quite a lot of other stuff in loads of other genres. It's a good BPM. It's about 122. It's a great record, and you know, she's obviously a very talented girl. But is it me, or has the coverage of her lately been way over the top? Like, I feel like her label are really trying their absolute best best to make her into the modern day incarnation of Madonna, and it kind of feels a bit forced. It feels like they're just not letting her breathe and do her job as an artist and kind of, you know, let it happen organically. They're just sort of kind of shoving it down our throat continuously. And if you think I'm exaggerating it, look, in recent weeks, just in recent weeks alone, she's on the front cover of Rolling Stone. She's on the front cover, I think, of Vogue, it feels like, yeah. And then over lockdown, there was that whole performance that she did where it was kind of an immersive thing that you had to buy your tickets for behind the paywall. It just feels a little bit too much. Like, it's just constant coverage of this girl. And it just feels a little bit manufactured, and it kind of makes me wonder why. It makes me also wonder and believe that this whole payola thing does exist in a big way in music. Like, a lot of the reason why certain artists are where they are and are bigger names than they probably should be has definitely to do with the machine behind them deciding to just crank it up and insert more money into the flipping machine and get it out there in a big way. It's not necessarily the craft and the art of what they're putting out there, and maybe also it's the fact that they can do the payola thing and get their tracks spun on a certain radio station, you know, 5 days a week, 7 days a week, 24/7. And if you listen to a track enough times, especially on your way to work or something, or just running errands, you're probably going to end up forcing yourself to like it, right? A modern kind of incarnation I can think of that was that Drake track. What's that? I'm Coming Home. Remember that track, right? That was one of probably Drake's worst tracks, but the more you heard it over and over again, it sort of you sort of started to like it, right? Even though you knew it was a terrible track. And I feel like this whole approach that Dua Lipa's management team are taking with her is inevitably going to serve her. It's probably going to hurt her more than it is going to help her, because people are going to end up getting fatigued. I think the same thing happened with Beyonce, and Rihanna obviously has the same thing, but she just takes massive breaks in between albums. But there is a skill in being able to know when to pop out and when not to pop out again, when to kind of pull back a bit, when to give your fans more content, when to maybe just let them have a bit of a break and put other things out there. There definitely is a skill to it, but I just feel like this constant media coverage of this girl is just way over the top for her level of talent. Don't get me wrong, she's a great singer. I think she's obviously got an ear for good beats. The dancing is a bit odd anyway. She's got that meme where she's sort of like shaking her wrist, her midsection in a weird and aggressive way. But in terms of her being the next Madonna, I just don't see it. But then I also think to myself, if a label did have the modern incarnation of Madonna on their hands, what would they do? Would they just let her be an underground artist and kind of let her do her own thing? Probably not. They'd probably do what they're doing with Dua Lipa, right? And just kind of ramp up the marketing campaign and get her everywhere so that people could be kind of forced to like her in record time. Because it feels like, again, maybe she's been around for a while. I think 5 years, maybe plus than that, right? Or maybe in terms of pop wise mainstream attention in the last 4 years or so. But it feels like they're rushing it. That's what I feel like. I feel like she's probably gotten way too much coverage in terms of her level of experience and overall time in the game. It just seems to be a bit overboard. I don't know, man. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm kind of going over the board around it, but I just think this is a little bit too much. There's too much being put out there about her in public, and I feel like inevitably it's just going to end up hurting her in the long run, because people end up getting tired, end up getting bored, and they want a new shiny thing to come along. And, you know, if there's one thing we know about the music industry, they love a new shiny object to come along to invest their money into. So this might be a bit counterproductive for her going forward. But again, she's making money, she's making dough, so who cares in that regard. What else do we have here? Oh, yes, we have an update of all updates. So I think most of you guys are aware that I kind of covered the beef between Peggy Gou and Daniel Wang that happened a few weeks ago, before the end of the new year. Daniel Wang, a very prominent disco house DJ from Berlin, originally from America, but obviously resides in Berlin, very well connected in the Berlin scene. Somebody who I'd say was a big motivator for myself to go to places like Hotel de Moor at Griesmüller. He wrote an amazing article for Electronic Beats a few years ago that he put together that kind of got me into that. He obviously made some great records that I've played over time as well, and it's just a bit of a mainstay in that sort of like disco housey sort of scene out there in Berlin. And for some odd reason, he seemed to have a little bit of a bee in his bonnet about Peggy Gou. He completely, you know, put her business out there and basically alleged that she was a terrible neighbor, then basically, you know, put out some behind the scenes stories about her in the Berlin to dance scene and DJing, and basically alluded to the fact that not a lot of people liked her, and just basically went out of his way to destroy her reputation online, right? And at first it didn't seem like a big deal, because I guess, you know, if you speak to certain folk or you kind of go on certain platforms, a lot of people don't really have that many great things to say about Peggy. They say that she probably represents everything that they hate about the scene. She's very vapid, image conscious, all about social media, blah 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 blah, whatever else you can label against her. So it seemed like an easy dunk. It seemed like an easy sort of like public feud to kind of predict, right? Experienced, well-established Berlin DJ decides to pick a fight with run-of-the-mill influencer DJ who people suspect has ghost producers, right? You'd think it's a bit of an easy win, but for some reason Daniel Wang did it in such a clumsy way that he somehow got people to back up Peggy in this beef, right? In a beef that he's kind of decided to take on board to bring down the scourge of influencers coming in and taking over the scene, and not for the love. He somehow lost because of how sloppily he done it, and now he's put out an apology, which feels like behind the scenes Peggy put a bit of pressure on him, maybe threatening him with a lawsuit or two to keep her name out of his mouth, and now he's basically come back with his tail between his leg and decided to put out a public apology and recanting every single bit of a statement that he put out prior, and even though he spent a concerted effort in order to kind of make her look horrible, now he's coming back with his tail in between his legs, telling everybody that he's sorry. So this is the screenshot and the statement he posted up on his Instagram. What you should know, why it's funny, I think, in general, because like I said, I think this on paper should have been an easy win for him, right? He's the experienced dude. He's the guy that's got more industry connections, more probably quote unquote well loved, well regarded in the scene in general. He should be able to dunk on her easily, but he didn't. But the other thing to spot really quickly is that he's closed the comments, so you can't comment on it, even though the original statement that he put out, he was absolutely going into the comments, replying to people, egging people on, basically ramping them up to say more salacious things. But in his statement, comments are closed and he's posted it all in public on his whiteboard. So let's just read what he has to say. Absolute horror show of a situation in it, but it also does prove that Peggy does move in silence like a gangster, like I suspected. I kind of expected this would be the approach that she would basically take. If you want to speak it feels like with Peggy, if you want to shoot, you better not miss. Because if you do, she's going to come after you with some force, as it's been proven with this hastily put together apology, which feels like it kind of came as a consequence of a very serious lawsuit being put together, because I'm sure the German laws for defamation are a bit mad. So this is the following apology. I wish to issue a public apology to Peggy Gou. I want to apologize publicly to Peggy because what I did was public. Look at him. Later, you don't get to have any sort of moral high ground now, motherfucker. It continues. As some of you may know, I made a posting on Facebook in early December 2020, which went viral, quote unquote. Yeah, because you wanted it to go viral, which caused a lot of pain, confusion, and hateful commentary on social media. It was also upsetting to Peggy's family, colleagues, friends, and fans. It's so embarrassing having to write this for a minute. She and I were neighbors in the same building for about 4 years, and for a while we were even friends. In fact, when her hit record, have you pronounced that, came out, I sent her a message congratulating her, because in fact I like the sound of that record very much. Don't cop please now, mate. Don't cop fees. Do not cop please. She's not your friend. You'd made that very clear. He continues here. There were differences which ended our friendship, but I was in the wrong for making and hateful commentary on social media. It was very upsetting. Sorry, I was wrong. So we said I was wrong. I was wrong for making the unfounded claims about her career and personal life, which were not just wrong and unknowingly true, but also none of my business. Of course, they were none of your business. That was the whole point we made originally in the video I watched when I covered it. Like, fair enough, she might be a cunt, she might be a piece of shit, she might be a pain in the ass, but the attacks that he was going on just screamed of utter unbridled jealousy. Somebody that couldn't come to grips with the idea that this new hot thing had come into DJing, didn't really play that long, and suddenly was getting all the opportunities presented to her under the sun and some, standing in front of Porsches, collecting money from flipping liquor brands, sponsorships with clothing companies, getting flown around the world, and it just grated him, especially because they lived in the same building. So you can just imagine how shitty he must have felt, bringing up his budget shopping and her coming in with her assistants carrying her flipping cucumbers and pineapples, and he's struggling to lift things up the stairs to get to his own apartment. I can imagine that level of jealousy. But again, if you're jealous, just be jealous. Don't then start besmirching her name with all the other accusations you're throwing out there. It's not necessary. But again, we digress. I encourage my friends and other people who don't know Peggy to attack her, and I repeatedly reached out to journalists so that they could amplify a message. Wow, so that's a part I didn't know. So I guess him obviously trying to destroy her reputation online is one thing. Personal experience, and it's obviously wrong. There's obviously a legal aspect to it, but some could argue that, hey, it's my personal experience with this person, I have a right to tell my story. But then I didn't know that he was going behind the scenes contacting journalists in order to kind of broadcast his message further, because that was something I wondered myself, innit? Why didn't places like Resident Advisor, Mix Mag, DJ Mag cover the story? It makes complete sense why they didn't, because they're all in bed with Peggy for the most part, right? I'd imagine some of them are also maybe in bed with Daniel Wang's label, but Peggy's label, as I proved to you in the other show, has some really strong, hard-hitting DJs part of it, right? So they didn't want to ruin that relationship in any way, shape or form by covering this beef. They just went to kind of conveniently ignore it, as they've conveniently ignored every other scandal that Peggy's kind of been pulled up on, but this one more so. But he would have his way to kind of amplify that message. So again, he's completely in the wrong here. So like I said, this is one of the biggest fuck ups ever, because she's not even a well-liked person and he still made himself look worse. Like, that's a real talent. It continues. There was a differences which ended our friendship, but I was in the wrong for making unfounded claims about her career. I encouraged my friends to do so. I would prefer that we all forget this incident, but the internet is but in the interest of fairness, I am making this public statement. I will forget. Yeah, you would. I'll fully retract everything I said. I knew at the time it wasn't true, and I hope that everyone will forgive me for making such a commotion about nothing. Yours truly, Daniel Wang. Commotion about nothing. And if you're wondering, to kind of remember what he actually writ, this is somebody put together or kind of copied and pasted the original statement, so you can see the level of pettiness that included in the statement that just kind of put him in trouble for no joke, right? Here's how it goes. This is strange years coming to an end. The two best things happened in 2020 are, because again, this is how he started off the statement. This strange years coming to an end. The two best things to happen in 2020 are Donald Trump got voted out of the White House and Peggy Gou moved out of my building. He equated Peggy Gou, a DJ that he's having an issue with because she happens to be successful and lives in his building. That's what you're going to reduce it to the outing of Donald Trump, or him losing the recent election. Like I said, at that time he officially had quote unquote lost. That's how he started his beef with this lady. That's how he thought he was going to start. That's how he thought he was going to win this war. And he continues, no, this is not a joke. I'm finally going public, right? As if, like, I don't know, she violated him in the worst possible way. I'm finally going public, and not as a DJ page for only 50 people to read. I've written this on my computer over and over again in my head for 2-3 years. I need to do this for my mental health, so sorry, but I need to say this. And he just rambles on like this for a good couple of other paragraphs, and then when you get to the point of it, there's not much there really. It's a bizarre coincidence that in this world that Peggy and Daniel Wang lived for 3 or 4 years separated by one floor before after she became famous. I truly wish I never got in this stuck-in situation. It's time to tell the truth while the landlord is still renovating the apartment which she left in a rage when he found out that conditioner she left it in. So again, unnecessary details that we didn't need to know about. So he's getting his comeuppance in that regard. And have we got a reply from Peggy in terms of what happened? maybe you can equate this picture. Is this video a reply, an indirect sort of reply to the summation? Is that young girl in the background Peggy, and the kid with the guitar, is that a representation of Danny Wang? I don't know. What do you guys think? It could be. Who knows? Let's see what she posted on her story about the issue. Did she say anything regarding it? Let's put the sound up. No. She's just moving like a gangster. She's not saying anything. She's a top girl, man. You might not like her, but she's a top girl.
I wanted to try in Korean, and I was afraid in the beginning.
Post of her on Instagram. What else is there going? Did she post anything else? No. So she hasn't taken a victory lap. She's just kind of left him to squirm online and run everything back. But she's basically just kept it humble and just kept it moving. Oh, you can't write it, man. You couldn't write a worse. You couldn't write a worse conclusion to this story. He absolutely effed it for himself, didn't he? What an absolute shower of a shite situation. But there you go. The never-ending war between Danny Wang and Peggy Gou is basically one way, really, to be fair, innit? He was the one that was going back and forth in the messages and the comments, getting people to comment on her stuff, getting people to share more stories. Do you remember he got that story of some assistant or somebody that worked close that was complaining about the shoes and the bags and all this absolute nonsense that was happening that has nothing to do with her? And then again, if you're wondering, oh, why would he do this, then look at the laws here regarding defamation in Germany. This is probably why he decided to recant his account of the situation pretty clearly. So this is courtesy of a website, what's this called, Media Laws Database, regarding the defamation laws in Germany. And it says the following: the German Criminal Code provides the following 3 categories for defamation related offences. 1, insult is punishable by up to 1 year in prison. 2, if committed by means of assault or fine. 2, defamation criminal code art number 186 is defined by asserting or disseminating a fact related to a person, which is probably what she did, which may defame him or negatively affect a public opinion about him. It is punished with a fine and imprisonment for up to 1 year. A sentence of imprisonment for up to 2 years can be imposed if the act is committed publicly or through the dissemination of written materials. God damn it. 3, slander criminal code R number 187 says it consists of a defamatory statement that the speaker knows to be false and that is aimed at damaging the person's reputation or endangering his creditworthiness. The punishment is a fine, imprisonment for up to 2 years. A sentence of imprisonment for up to 5 years can be imposed if the act is committed publicly or via media. So definitely he got whacked with some kind of slander libel lawsuit, got told to cease and desist, keep your Peggy Gou's name out of her mouth. I can't even say her name. I don't want to keep it in my mouth. But yeah, she moves in exact silence, innit? She is an absolute legend, this woman. She came through, moved in silence, didn't say too much on the old social media feed, posted this amazing clip just after the statement went live, which again I think might be a bit of an indirect representation of her basically slapping some sense into Daniel Wang's head and telling him, hey, you don't play around with me anymore. And this is him groveling on the interwebs, closing the comments, right? Even though he was the one replying to people in the comments itself. And if you don't believe me, look at this. Where is it? I think I've got it here. No, I think it's there, right? This is the one. Look, this is the screenshot someone took from ages ago of Danny Wang basically getting into the comments. Like, here, look, this is his post here, ranting and raving, and then somebody posted their account of their, I guess, of their encounter with Peggy. It says, was it after the plane landed, Peggy then yelled at her sister at the gate because she made her wait to get off of the plane. Not only is she an asshole that treats people badly, she's also an idiot, and her sister isn't a slave. Peggy is a garbage human. Yeah, cool, but this could also be applied to all number of people in the scene who kind of treat assistants or people that help them like total shit. This could blown way out of proportion. And even though, who knows, this complete fabrication, this could be a work of fiction. We have no idea. And here he is in the comments, egging it on. Oh God, it stings to read this. I knew it was, I wasn't imagining it all. Such a drama queen. And then now look, the drama came to his front door. He couldn't handle it. put his tail between his leg, hastily putting together apology because he doesn't want that lawsuit action, because most of what he said was probably bullshit, conjecture, stuff that he, you know, hearsay for the most part, and the fact that he was going, because again, I think I respect if you don't like somebody and you're just going to put out your own personal account of how they basically dealt with you, and if they kind of threaten you with a lawsuit, you just shut up, but you don't apologize, right? I think that's pretty not admirable, but I can understand that, right? There's something to understand there. But to go around behind the scenes kind of trying to rile up journalists or trying to get them to get involved in your nonsense, to what? What was the end goal as well for this? Like, what was the end goal? To get more gigs, to make her look worse? Like, if people didn't like her to begin with, they weren't suddenly now going to not like her more. You know what I mean? If anything, it's ruined his reputation more so in this respect. She's actually come out this looking pretty decent, considering the level of abuse that she was getting on social. She's treated it pretty good. She's not gone online and made herself into a victim or started crying on her cell phone or written a. Do you know what I mean? She's basically moved in silence, got her lawyers involved, and told him to keep her name out of her goddamn mouth. And now look, we've got a hastily putting together apology, and it's now been concluded, I guess, isn't it? It's over. It's over with. The beef is finally done, and I'm glad for it, to be honest. Anyway, I could do without reporting about this thing again and again and again. I'm not even reporting. I'm just kind of collating what people are posting online. But hey, what can one do? Let's move on here. What else do we have? So for the chat, see what people are saying. Yes, Big Boss. Any UK drill rappers you favor too? UK drill rappers. Oh, talking about UK drill rappers. Yeah, M Huncho. Well, he's not really a drill rapper, but M Huncho I'm a big fan of. M24 I'm a big fan of. He's probably drill. Digger D, obviously. Lowski. Who else? Lowski, Digger D, M Huncho. There's a few kids with masks on that I kind of forgot their names of, but there's a few UK people I'm a big fan of. Who else said here? Yep, take a look at the TikTok channel. Busted, Drake gave. Someone said hi, I'm new. Yes, Estito Wagwan, thanks for being new in the sector. What else do we have here to talk about? I think that might be it, you know. I think that might be a good place to end it. Where are we at now? We're at like an hour and 20 anyway, so it might be a good place to end it, heading up into 2 a.m. So that was open tabs number 4. Thanks so much for tuning in. As per usual, it's been a pleasure to have your company. If it's been your first time checking out the show, make sure you smash that like button, hit subscribe, and leave me a comment. That would be nice for you, you know, to kind of get the show out there. And of course, share it with all your family and friends. And I will, of course, see you guys again very, very soon. Until then, enjoy your weekend as best as you can. Stay safe. Don't get the virus. Try not to get the virus if possible. Look after those near you. And I'll see you guys again very, very soon. Take care. Peace. Be safe.